the composers that are being played on this concert are Italian, but what's interesting is that it's just instrumental music. That you don't get to hear, because Italian music is basically, we immediately go to opera, Verdi, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, there are opera composers. I mean, Puccini is one of the composers.
Yeah, let me just go through the list. Sorry,
Yeah.
yes, I forgot to go through this. Go with Gabrielli, Vivaldi, Petrassi, Puccini, and de Sabata.
That's a lot of centuries in there being covered. I think that's what's so interesting about this concert, is that it's representing a country's music across quite a number of centuries.
Yeah, 450 years worth of music being covered here. Have you played any music by any of those? I'm assuming Vivaldi, being a violinist.
Vivaldi, yes. Yeah.
The Four Seasons, of course.
Yes.
And Gabrielli, have you ever?
Well, no, never. I think he also mostly wrote for like vocal and brass.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
I've played a lot of Gabrielli because sometimes there's a drum part in it, which is very simple, so dum 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 digga digga dum dum digga digga stuff. There's a there was a set
to accompany the brass,
which was very common in those times. Whether actually he wrote that part for a drum is another matter. I think often maybe it was improvised essentially, if at all.
Give Gabrielli I know this off the top of my head, but I'm going to read it just in case. 1556 he was born. That's a long time ago. So of course we don't actually know really that much at all about
what I know actually about him, what I learned in school about him, is that he founded this Venetian, do you say Venetian? Venetian polyphony. So he used like vocal pieces and like told the brass to play these vocal pieces, but he put the brass in the how's the dome called? The Marcus Dome in Venedig, very famous, like surrounding the audience, so that the human is in the middle point of the music, not like the religion, which was before all the time, but there they put the human being more in the center.
Yeah.
And the brass is playing to them, so that it's kind of like Dolby surround what we have in the cinema.
Does it matter that they're doffing their cap towards that style of playing, or?
Well, as I say, I quite like it. I mean, in the string pieces, you can do that. In the Gabrielli, they're only playing on modern instruments, so there's no reason why they would attack it in an authentic performance way, because you can't, because you're playing on essentially completely different instruments.
So just for those who don't know, the valve, which is this bit here, it is a modern invention to save them using large amounts of...
And the trombone wasn't a trombone, it was probably a sack butt, was the precursor to it. And they're all very, very different instruments, and they wouldn't have been as loud because of the modern materials that are used in brass. But I may be wrong about this, but actually what I think is interesting about the Gabrielli pieces is I think that the main reference for performance of those pieces now is actually the Philip Jones Brass Ensemble.
Yes.
The Philip Jones Brass Ensemble, for people who don't know, was Philip Jones is a huge figure in British music, in brass music particularly. He ran this ensemble of the finest brass players in the UK, and he published a lot of music that other brass ensembles could then play.
Yes.
And I mean, I'm not a brass player, but I hung out with a lot of brass players. And I used to play percussion in a lot of brass pieces as well. And they're all very famous arrangements in that world, including these Gabrielli pieces, which were part of those sets. And the recordings that they did, I think, are incredibly influential, actually. Yeah. I think most British brass players of a certain age would have grown up listening to those performances and those recordings. And in a way, I think that is a bigger influence than what it might have sounded like originally. Yeah. Because, as I said, they're not playing instruments that are anything like the original brass instruments, so there's no point in doing it. So it's an interesting, different point of reference, isn't it? That actually it's very modern, that performance.
Yeah, that's true. I have to say, I'm a little bit, it doesn't matter. At the end of it all, the music is so great that how you play it, I mean, you've got to go such a long way to screw up such wonderful music. And the thing I like the most about Vivaldi is the fact that he published his music. The composer and publisher relationship is extremely important. There's no point in composing a piece of music and nobody can read it because it got out there. And how they publish it is extremely important. And Vivaldi, his publisher, was right here in Amsterdam because they had a far superior way of literally putting out music. And so how he discovered that, being from where he was from anyway, I just think that's lovely. So the Four Seasons was originally published here in Amsterdam. When you first worked with him, what were your first impressions? Can you remember? It wasn't that
I actually thought this is, he's from Italia, he's living in Italia all the time.
Right, which of course is not the case.
It's not the case, because he seemed so Italian for me, just his way, how he speaks, how he is just Italian, and I really liked it. He was very passionate about his work, and he always tried to have the balance between this being strict with the orchestra, but also being nice. So to involve them all the time with humor, but in the humor there's also a direction. Yeah. And this I really liked, that he could keep the balance. And we did La Valse from Ravel, and that was like, I can imagine, I can remember the concert we did, like, La Valse was like Le Run, I think. It was really fast, and we all enjoyed a lot. I don't know if it was too fast, but he went crazy. I just had him in front of me. He was like doing this and dancing, and apparently he's also dancing all the time to get free. He said once in a rehearsal, and yeah, I think he's a really great guy.
Well, he's a guy that understands show business, and in fact, he gave an interview, and there's a little clip from this interview which I think is just fascinating.
It's a very interesting subject that comes up, especially around classical music, and we hear the word culture, we hear the word art, and God help you if you include classical music in anything other than in those two contexts. Well, I'm very much a believer in something called show business, in entertainment. And those are not dirty words. I think there are rules of show business. Composers use the drama of show business, that how do you create the big bang, the big effect? Well, if you give it all away right at the beginning, you've lost it. The climax doesn't surprise, doesn't have that something extra. Timing in music is show business. It's very important. That something is entertaining is wonderful. That we go to the opera and we see a drama, even the darkest drama can entertain because it can nourish us, it can enrich us, but it can also make us think about ourselves in the world. There's light music, which is naturally perhaps more entertaining, but I don't think it's It should be just light music that is entertaining. So for me, show business and entertainment are two, well, they're pillars of, certainly of my world.
An interview there that was actually recorded in Amsterdam. If you want to see the whole thing, then you can do it as part of the main concert that we're talking about. He's such an eloquent guy. He's really, I mean, how can you not like him?
He is a good thing for music. He's such a great communicator,
Yes.
as we've seen there, but he's made quite a few television programs about music, which I think are wonderful. He has that passion, but he also knows how to express it, which not everyone does. And I think he brings that to the stage. I mean, you could be very cliched about the whole Italian thing with the arms, you know, and all that kind of stuff and heart on the sleeve and everything. But actually, I think it means something. It does work a treat for him.